Thank you for joining us today for the Trachtenberg Schools Executive in Residence Program for Spring 2025. We are thrilled that joining us today is one of our alum who graduated in 1996 with an MPA, Kathleen Enright, who is the President and CEO of Council on Foundations. So thank you for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here. It's an honor to be in this role, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Well, we love this. This is the second semester we're doing it, and it's been incredibly insightful to hear from our alumni. So we have some questions here that we're going to start off with. And the first one, we just ask each of our executive and residents just to spend a couple minutes talking about your current work and your career path to getting to where you are.
Sure, happy to do it. As Denise mentioned, I am currently the CEO of the Council on Foundations. And for those of you who might not know us, we are the broadest representative group for the field of philanthropy. And we both work on improving philanthropic performance, helping our members do their work to the best of their ability, as well as making sure that there's a supportive policy environment in Washington for civil society and particularly for philanthropy. So, big exciting thing that Denise was maybe alluding to right now is that Congress is looking at a major tax package of which philanthropy might either be at the table or on the table, unclear. So we need to keep our voices in that conversation to make sure that that foundations can play their right role in society. So as Denise also said, I came out here to DC to go to GW pretty much right after college. And my mission statement at first was that I just wanted to get the skills I needed to be a good manager inside a social purpose organization. So some kind of nonprofit. That was my, fairly straightforward and narrow goal. But then soon after I graduated, I found the organizations that care about the whole. The organizations that care about the whole nonprofit sector, that try to have our organizations be strong, well supported, well led, well governed, financially healthy. And I was hooked. That was it for me. So right after getting out of grad school, I went to BoardSource, which is the national group that works on effective nonprofit governance, particularly board leadership, but also working with CEOs. And then from there, I was recruited into a startup role of a group called Grantmakers for Effective Organizations. And they too are a philanthropy group that's focused on keeping nonprofit voices at the center of conversations about giving. And so I was there for a good stint of time. And now I am very proud to be in this role. The reason that these national sector-wide organizations appealed to me is because of the magnification effect, right? You work with one foundation, they do their work better. They make a change that helps the nonprofits more, and you have the ability to influence potentially a whole sector or a whole subsector of nonprofit work. And so when we help foundations do their work well, it has the potential to influence thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of nonprofits worldwide.
Fantastic. I like that perspective because students are always asking that the difference between working, kind of this way, deep versus broad. So it's great to hear.
Well, and I'll just say quickly that you have to want to be working at a systems level, which sometimes you don't see the direct effects, right? And the duration of change you're working on is decades, maybe generations. It's not this sort of immediate smiles on the faces of students or people who are lifted out of poverty in the moment. It's changing things for hundreds of thousands of people over the very long term.
Fantastic perspective. When you're looking at your career, do you feel like there were some pivotal moments that have really impacted decisions you've made and how that shaped your leadership?
Well, maybe I shouldn't tell this one, but I'm in a mood, so I'm going to. One of the major shaping moments of my career was getting fired. I got fired from my first DC job. For maybe I would call it not reading the room. I was a rabble rouser who wanted to make things better, and all of my intent was good, but I was overly challenging the executive in this small nonprofit, to the point where she was not interested in having me there anymore. And so it was humbling and, devastating at the time. And it just helped me understand the importance of how you go about the work, as well as what you do and what your intentions are. And also, having little p political skills, understanding where people are coming from, what they're motivated by, with what their egos need or don't need, and those kinds of things matter too. Did you want a couple of stories? That one feels like a low, but
No,
maybe
that's
a high
great.
note.
Yeah, no, we've got some more questions, so we'll keep going because this kind of fits into this. So it's kind of challenges or setbacks in your career. And what advice would you give for people? Because as you know, when you're early on in your career, those setbacks feel huge.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
so kind of maybe some other ones, and what advice would you give for overcoming them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of overcoming the first one that I just shared, there was some, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, and I probably could have gone to mentors and listened a little harder, and been more self-reflective about how I was showing up. So that was very helpful. Yeah, I've loved 360-degree feedback. I've been in roles for the rest of my career where I have a whole board of directors assessing my performance, staff assessing my performance, in this case, 1,000 members assessing my performance. And I see that as additive and really, really helpful. Another kind of setback situation was when I got the startup role at Geo. And I was recruited in the summer of 2001, hired in July for a start date in November, because the final thing I did at BoardSource was rename the organization from the National Center of Nonprofit Boards to BoardSource. So we think that was a positive change. Um, so I was hired to run this nascent startup that had the right people behind it, the big foundations. There was the right issue, was timely. And then what happened between July and November of 2001 was September 11th. And so the bottom went out from in the market. A lot of foundations that were keenly focused on Geo's mission started retrenching, and the future of the organization became unclear. And so, it was sort of before I even got through the door, the world had changed, and the facts on the ground had shifted. And so, we needed to adjust. I needed to adjust and figure out, what are the ways in which we could be most effective in the moment. And one of those ways was reminding philanthropy that when the world around philanthropy is in crisis, that's when we are called forth to do more. In an economic downturn, the reason that there are that endowments are strong and important resources is because they can give countercyclically. Foundations can show up when there is not, when folks are losing their jobs, when the stock market is down. So when folks are living on razor thin margins, our suggestion was give more, give deeper, give more flexibly. And so, I think it was a moment to try to pivot and meet the moment.
Very profound advice, particularly for now too. What do you think differentiates you as a leader, and how has your leadership style evolved over time, and what has impacted that through your career?
I feel very complimented when people feel like I help them be their best. And so that is the role and goal for me in leadership. I am surrounded in this current role and in previous roles by people who do their jobs way better than I could ever do them. And that is the purpose and intent. But that doesn't mean that I can't continue to help them grow and shape them into the next leadership role that they want. So, I'm a collaborative leader. I don't lead by edict or command in any way. And I pride myself on that, though I get hired for the big job because some board buys into my vision. I try to create that as a shared vision. If it starts out with some pieces of it coming from me, then it gets shaped and molded by a host of other folks who bring different perspectives and make it much better and more profound. I guess another differentiator, which I don't think gets all the credit that it deserves in leadership in general, is that I execute well, meaning not me personally. I set up systems and people and processes to turn vision into concrete reality. And so, the care and tending of the nuts and bolts of running a strong organization matters very much. And it's often the difference maker between being mediocre, the organization being mediocre or great, or the organization being, failing, is if you might have a terrific bold vision and a charismatic leader. And if you're not building that on a strong foundation, if you're trying to reach for the stars off of a rickety ladder, it's going to all fall down.
I love that you brought that up, because I think that that's something, particularly as students, they might minimize their roles in that execution, and particularly early on in the career, how important that is, because it's not sexy, right? Execution isn't something people are like, oh, this is going to get lots of media attention around execution, right?
But it can break you. It certainly can. And, just at this moment where, people are feeling kind of unsettled in a lot of different ways. And again, in previous times with economic downturns, part of that execution is a strong financial base. And, a point of pride for me is that in my 25 years of running organizations, I've never had to let anybody go for financial reasons. We've always had a healthy enough business model and financial depth and strength that we might make decisions about changes or whatever else, but by and large, we've planned to weather any bumps, and we've been able to weather those bumps.
I was just meeting with a student for advising today, and we were looking at GuideStar Candide to look at the financials for an organization she was interested in. And I said, you need to know what their funding strategy is to make sure that they're.
Yeah. And, when I took this job, my organization had been running $1 million deficits for 7 years in a row. And so there was very much some holes in the financial infrastructure that we needed to plug. But, with care and intent and collaborative financial leadership, it wasn't that hard to do, but you have to care about it and you have to focus on it.
Spoken from somebody who knows what they're doing. That brings us to the last question we'll ask here before we stop the recording and open up to questions. And it's a kind of a both and, or an either or, it depends on you, is kind of what leadership lesson do you wish you had learned earlier in your career, or is there a piece, and you could be both, piece of professional advice that you received that has really stayed with you?
Well, the first thing that I was thinking about, I mean, you all are probably at different points in your career, as I think you're all graduate students. So, some of you might have been working for a while and came back, some might be earlier in your career. And, I guess my sense is that there's a fit that really makes the difference. A purpose fit, meaning my purpose and the purpose of this organization is tightly enough aligned that I don't feel any rub, that my skill set is aligned with this role that I'm going into. And that, I see this organization as one that's operating in a values aligned way, that is operating in good faith, that the people around me, either that I report to or that I'm working alongside, I think that they have my best interests at heart, and that they'll support my growth. So, those are things I looked for in the earlier days of my career, and it really made a difference. I was 25 when I was started at Board Source, and over the course of 5 years went up through enough levels and got attention from a board member that he's the one who recommended me for the CEO role.
Fantastic. Well, this is the end of the portion of this, and I just want to thank you for sharing real honest insights about your career and leadership. So we are thrilled to have you as one of our executive in residence this spring.